The bridge of the Earth vessel Defiant was quiet except for the soft hum of machinery. Captain Daniel Harper stood with his hands behind his back, staring at the view screen. Outside, in the darkness of space, hundreds of alien warships surrounded his single human cruiser. 17 different species had gathered their fleets together, all pointing their weapons at him. Commander Lisa Grant walked up beside him. Her face looked worried. She spoke quietly so only Daniel could hear. The captain nodded once and told her to put the transmission through. The screen changed to show a large chamber filled with strange beings. In the center sat High Arbiter Zelnathar, a creature that looked like a giant mantis made from living crystal. Around him sat representatives from every major alien power in the galaxy. Zelnathar spoke and the computer translated his words into English. He addressed Daniel by name and rank. He said humanity had been part of Coalition space for 6 years now. In that time, humans had ignored 14 separate orders. They refused to change their genetics. They kept doing things the aliens called barbaric. The High Arbiter said the Coalition had been patient with humanity because humans were young and new to space travel. But that patience had run out. The screen split to show a long list of demands. Lisa read them silently, and her face went pale. Zelnathar explained each demand one by one. First, all human military ships had to change their weapons. The aliens said human guns and missiles were illegal under galactic law. Daniel felt his crew moving nervously behind him. Those weapons had saved their lives many times. The Rizwan record. Second, human genetics had to be standardized. The aliens said humans showed too much physical variety. Every human would have to undergo gene therapy to look more similar. Lisa touched her own face without thinking. She knew what that meant. The galaxy wanted everyone to look the same. Humanity's different skin colors and body types were considered a mistake that needed fixing. Third, human reproduction would be controlled by an alien board. Each human could only have one child. They could only have that child when the aliens gave permission. Lieutenant Jake Morrison sat at the communications station. His hands gripped the console tightly. His wife had just told him she was pregnant with twins. Fourth, Earth schools had to teach alien subjects only. Human history and art, and philosophy, would be put in storage and forgotten. The list kept going. Stop speaking human languages and only use the alien standard language. Only travel on routes the aliens approved. Give up Earth's government seat. Let aliens approve all human science before humans could use it. The demands went on and on. When the list finally ended, Zelnathar looked directly at the camera. He said these were not suggestions or requests. These were requirements for humanity to keep existing in Coalition space. Daniel had 48 hours to signal that Earth agreed completely. If Earth refused, there would be punishment. After punishment would come forced obedience. The other alien council members made gestures of agreement. A bug-like creature clicked its jaws. A water creature rippled in its tank. Zelnathar's voice became softer. He said he understood this was hard for humans. But the galaxy had rules for good reasons. 10,000 species lived in peace under Coalition law. Humanity's insistence on being special threatened that peace. Surely Daniel could see the wisdom in unity instead of chaos. Daniel took a slow breath. Behind him, every member of his crew was watching and waiting. He thought about his daughter back on Earth who had just started college. He thought about the crew who trusted him. He thought about every human who ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Daniel began speaking. His voice was calm and steady. He said he had listened to all the demands. He understood the aliens believed they were being reasonable, that they were offering humanity something good. Zelnathar's crystal body seemed to brighten. He asked if Daniel would comply. Daniel said no. Just that one word. The alien council chamber exploded with shocked sounds. Clicks and hisses and strange tones of disbelief filled the audio. Zelnathar raised one bladed arm for silence. He asked if Daniel understood. This was not a request. Daniel said he understood perfectly. His answer was still no. Zelnathar asked if Daniel would doom humanity to isolation, or even death just for pride. Daniel shook his head slowly. He said the aliens asked humans to give up their weapons, their bodies, their children, their history, and their identity. The aliens called it unity. Humans called it extinction. One council member muttered something about dramatic human emotions. The translation caught it clearly. Daniel continued speaking. His voice grew stronger. He said Zelnathar claimed 10,000 species lived in harmony under coalition law. But Daniel had studied galactic history. He knew what happened to species who refused the first offers: the Takarans, the Yil, the Broken Suns people. They did not die naturally. The coalition absorbed them piece by piece, until nothing original remained. Zelnathar's crystal features seemed to grow harder. He said those species made choices. They could have succeeded within the coalition. Instead, they held on to savage independence and paid the price. Daniel replied that maybe those species understood something the coalition had forgotten. That diversity was not inefficiency. That free will was not chaos. That life was not meant to be standardized and controlled. A rocky alien representative rumbled that structure meant survival and chaos meant death. Daniel challenged this idea. He asked why the aliens looked so afraid of humans if their way was so superior. 17 species with hundreds of ships, all pointed at one human cruiser. If the coalition way was truly better, why did they need threats to make humans comply? The council chamber went silent for a moment. Zelnathar finally said that humans were children playing with fire. The coalition had guided galactic civilization for 1,000,000 years. They knew what worked. Daniel said quietly that maybe that was the problem. They had been doing the same thing for so long that they forgot other ways existed. Zelnathar said Daniel's time was running out. 48 hours to signal compliance or face consequences. Daniel said humanity would face the consequences then. Because humanity does not kneel, the transmission ended suddenly. The view screen showed the coalition fleet again. Their weapons were powering up now. Energy readings spiked across the sensor grid. Lisa stepped beside Daniel. She said what he did was either very brave or very foolish. Daniel smiled slightly. He said probably both. Jake called out that Earth Command was sending a priority message. Daniel guessed they wanted to know why he just declared war on the galaxy. Jake grinned and said Admiral Peterson sent a message that said to give them hell. Daniel felt warmth spread through his chest. Earth supported him. Humanity stood together. He announced over the ship-wide speakers that all crew should go to battle stations. This was real. They were about to show the galaxy what happened when you threatened human freedom. The crew rushed to their positions. Daniel stared at the impossible odds. One ship against an armada. One species against 10,000. But humanity always loved impossible odds. The real battle was starting now. High Arbiter Zelnathar stood motionless in his command chamber aboard the flagship Eternal Concordance. Around him, holographic images of the council members flickered with anger and confusion. Ambassador Krell of the Vrexian species hissed through his mandibles. His bug-like body twitched as he spoke. He called it arrogance. A single ship and a species barely 10 years into space dared to refuse them. Zelnathar raised one arm for quiet. He said to be patient. The human captain was emotional and acted without thinking. When he saw the fleet advance and understood he could not win, he would change his mind. A water creature asked what would happen if the human did not change his mind. Zelnathar said calmly that they would disable the human vessel and take the crew prisoner. Then, they would integrate Earth by force. The coalition was not barbaric. Zelnathar ordered Fleet Commander Vorath to begin moving the ships forward. Weapons should be set to disable, not destroy. He wanted the Defiant stopped, but not blown up. The commander acknowledged the order. The assembled coalition fleet began moving forward. Hundreds of ships moved together in perfect formation. It was a sight that had broken the will of countless species over thousands of years. An unstoppable wall of unified power. On the Defiance Bridge, alarm systems chimed as the fleet approached. Lieutenant Jake called out that range was closing. 2 million kilometers, and getting closer. The aliens were holding formation Delta 7, which was their standard intimidation pattern. Commander Lisa studied her tactical screen. She said their weapons were charging but not locked on target. They wanted humans to run away. Daniel asked how long until the aliens were in effective weapons range. Lisa replied, 90 seconds at current speed. Jake reported another message from the flagship. High Arbiter Zelnathar was offering one final chance to surrender. Daniel said to ignore it. Then he asked Lisa if their surprise packages were in position. She smiled and said yes. All 6 stealth drones were holding position exactly where Daniel wanted them. Daniel told Jake to open a communication channel, not just to the flagship but broadcast on all coalition frequencies. He wanted every ship in that fleet to hear him. Jake's fingers moved across his console quickly. He said the channel was open and Daniel was broadcasting live across the entire enemy fleet. Daniel took a breath and began speaking clearly. He addressed the High Arbiter by name. He said Zelnathar gave humanity 48 hours to comply. Daniel was going to save everyone time. He paused to let the silence stretch out. Then he said, humanity's answer was no. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. He asked if the aliens wanted to know why humans refused. He would educate them about what it meant to be human. On the Concordance, Zelnathar's crystal features showed confusion. He asked what the human was doing. Daniel's voice continued across every coalition channel. He said the aliens prided themselves on unity, on 10,000 species living in harmony under their laws. But Daniel had studied their history. He knew the truth. Their harmony was purchased with surrender. And every species that joined the coalition gave up pieces of themselves. Their weapons, their culture, their right to choose their own path. Zelnathar ordered someone to shut down the transmission. A technician replied they were trying. The humans were broadcasting on 17 different frequencies at once. Each one used different encryption. They would have to jam all coalition channels to stop it. Daniel kept talking. He said the aliens claimed they wanted to save humanity from itself. That human diversity was inefficient. That human weapons were barbaric. That human freedom was chaos. But the aliens did not understand something important about humanity. Humans were diversity. Humans were chaos. That was not weakness but humanity's greatest strength. In the fleet, crew members of various species found themselves listening even though they did not want to. Daniel said that, for 4 million years, humans struggled on one small planet. Humans did not have claws or fangs. They were not the fastest or strongest. By all logic, they should have gone extinct 100 times. But they did not. He asked if they wanted to know why. He paused again. Then he said it was because humans adapt. Because humans innovate. Because when the universe says something is impossible, humans say, watch us do it anyway. He said the coalition had seen everything. The aliens had been doing the same thing, the same way for 1 million years. They forgot what it meant to truly evolve. Zelnathar snapped that this was enough. He ordered Fleet Commander Vorath to advance to weapons range and prepare to fire. But Daniel was not finished. He said the aliens wanted to force humans to give up kinetic weapons, the railguns and missiles they called primitive. He would show them why humans still loved simple, reliable technology. Lisa called out urgently that coalition fleet weapons were going hot. Multiple target locks were focusing on their position. Daniel ordered calmly to execute Protocol Darwin. Lisa grinned in a predatory way. She acknowledged the order and executed Protocol Darwin. The 6 stealth drones that had been drifting silently in space suddenly activated. Each one had been positioned carefully within the coalition fleet formation over the past 6 hours. They were close enough that in the vastness of space and chaos of so many ships, nobody noticed them. Each drone carried one payload, a 30-kilogram tungsten rod, and a small chemical rocket. Fleet Commander Vorath demanded to know what those signatures were. Where did those contacts come from? The drones fired at the same moment. Physics worked the same across the galaxy. Mass times velocity equals momentum. In space with no air resistance, even simple technology could be devastating. The tungsten rods accelerated to nearly light speed in seconds. They did not have guidance systems or smart targeting. They did not need them. The Coalition fleet, packed in perfect formation, provided massive targets. The first rod punched through the shields of a destroyer. Shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not solid projectiles moving at incredible speeds. The rod passed through the ship's hull, like it was not there. The kinetic energy transfer ripped the vessel apart from inside. The second and third rods found similar targets. 2 more ships catastrophically disabled in seconds. The fourth rod missed its intended target, but struck a carrier at an angle. It sheared off an entire engine section and sent the massive ship into an uncontrolled spin. Vorath screamed orders to take evasive action and break formation. The perfect Coalition fleet dissolved into chaos as hundreds of ships scrambled to avoid collision with damaged vessels. 2 ships collided, trying to dodge the same debris. Another took friendly fire from a panicking gunner. In 90 seconds, the unstoppable armada had been reduced to confusion and disorder. Daniel said softly into the still open channel that these were primitive weapons but effective. On the Concordance, Zelnathar stood in stunned silence. He asked how the humans positioned drones within their formation. Daniel's voice answered, as if he heard the question. He said they watched the aliens assemble their fleet for 3 days. The aliens followed standard protocols exactly. They were so used to species fearing them that they stopped watching for threats. They got complacent. Zelnathar shouted this was an act of war. Daniel corrected him and said no. This was a demonstration. He could have loaded those drones with nuclear warheads. Humans could have killed thousands, but they did not. Because unlike the Coalition, humanity still believed in proportional response. The aliens threatened humans. Humans bloodied their nose. Now maybe they could talk like equals instead of master and servant. The Coalition fleet continued struggling back into some order. 5 ships were critically damaged. Dozens more had minor damage from collisions or debris. Most importantly, their appearance of invincibility had shattered. Zelnathar said with a cold, hard voice that Daniel made a grave mistake. He showed the Coalition that humanity was exactly as dangerous as they feared. The Council would not forgive this. Daniel replied that humans did not need forgiveness. They needed respect. Like it or not, the Arbiter was going to give it to them. Zelnathar promised the fleet would regroup and destroy them. Daniel acknowledged maybe they could. They definitely had the firepower. But before giving that order, Zelnathar should ask himself something. If one human ship with 6 drones could do this much damage to their fleet, what would the entire human armada do when they tried to invade Earth? Silence fell across the channels. Daniel said that was right. Humans might be young and primitive by alien standards, but humans had been fighting wars on Earth for 10,000 years. They learned every dirty trick, every guerrilla tactic, every desperate strategy. If the aliens wanted to conquer humanity, they better be prepared to pay a price that would make today look like a minor problem. Lisa leaned close to Daniel and spoke quietly. Sensors showed several ships in the enemy fleet breaking formation. They were not attacking, but pulling back. Daniel nodded slightly. Fear and doubt were spreading through Coalition ranks. That was good. Daniel made a counter-offer to the High Arbiter. The aliens should leave humans alone. Humans would stay in their corner of space. They would trade with whoever wanted to trade. They would defend themselves when threatened, and they absolutely refused to give up one single bit of what made them human. In return, humans would not actively interfere with the Coalition. Zelnathar asked if Daniel thought he could dictate terms. His voice had lost some certainty. Daniel said he thought they just proved they could. Now Zelnathar had a choice. escalate this into a war that would cost far more than the aliens were willing to pay, or accept that humanity was not going to fit into their neat, standardized boxes. The communication channel filled with sounds of debate from the Coalition Council. Voices rose and fell in a dozen languages. Finally, Zelnathar spoke again, and said this was not over. Daniel replied he did not think it would be, but it was a start. The Coalition fleet began a slow withdrawal. Damaged ships were being towed. The formation was much looser and more cautious than before. As the last enemy vessels moved out of weapons range, Jake let out a breath he had been holding. He said he could not believe that actually worked. Daniel smiled tiredly and said, honestly, neither could he. 3 weeks after the confrontation, High Arbiter Zelnathar called an emergency meeting of the Coalition Grand Council on the central world of Apex Prime. The chamber was carved from a single massive crystal that took 10,000 years to grow. It held representatives from every major civilization in the Coalition. The atmosphere was tense and uncomfortable. Zelnathar called for order. His crystal voice cut through the noise. He said they must address the human situation decisively. Ambassador Krell clicked his mandibles together. He said decisively meant what exactly? The humans humiliated them. 5 ships destroyed, and dozens damaged, all from a single human vessel. The entire galaxy watched them retreat. Fleet Commander Vorath corrected him and said it was not a retreat but a strategic withdrawal. There was a difference. The water creature representative spoke up. She said the difference did not matter. Her intelligence services reported increased unrest on 17 worlds. The humans gave subject species ideas. Indeed, across Coalition space, the impossible had happened. For the first time in living memory, member species were questioning the Council's authority. On the water world of Meldon, a young scientist named Chorus saved the human broadcast. He was showing it to gatherings of his people. He told them to watch. The humans refused, and survived. On the Hive world, entire subgroups were debating whether submission to Coalition standardization cost them something important. Even on the rocky planet where the silicon-based beings lived, they were running endless computer simulations. They tried to calculate how one primitive species outmaneuvered the galaxy's most powerful alliance. Back in the council chamber, Zelnathar addressed everyone. He said the humans disrupted the natural order. If they did not respond with overwhelming force, they risked systemic collapse. A delegate from the peaceful Luminar species rose. Their glowing form showed concern. They asked if overwhelming force was really the answer. The humans made a valid point. Perhaps Coalition integration protocols had become too rigid and too demanding. Shocked silence fell over the chamber. The Luminar had been Coalition members for 800,000 years. They never questioned policy before. Krell hissed and asked if they would side with the primitives. The Luminar replied calmly that they sided with reason. The Coalition demanded species surrender their weapons, their diversity, their reproductive freedom, even their cultural identity. The human captain asked a simple question, which was why. The Luminar found they did not have a good answer. Zelnathar stated firmly that chaos must be contained. Unregulated diversity led to conflict. They built a stable galactic civilization by ensuring uniformity. The Luminar continued by saying, or maybe it was because uniformity made species easier to control. The chamber erupted. Half the delegates shouted support for the High Arbiter. The other half had gone suddenly and tellingly quiet. Meanwhile on Earth, humanity was preparing. In Geneva, the United Earth government worked around the clock. President Helen Carter stood before a holographic display showing their star system's defenses. She commanded a status report. Admiral Stephen Peterson stepped forward. He addressed her as Madam President. He said they accelerated Mars shipyard construction. They would have 12 new destroyers operational in 6 months instead of a year. The asteroid belt mining operations provided more raw materials than projected. Dr. Raymond Cole added that Captain Harper's stunt bought them time, but it also painted a target on Earth. They needed to be ready for the next move. Carter asked about allies. Had anyone in the coalition reached out to them? Peterson shook his head. Officially, no. Unofficially, they were receiving encrypted messages from scientists, military officers, and civilian groups across coalition space. These beings were asking questions. They sought information about human culture, human technology, and human philosophy. Carter smiled grimly. She said they started something. Dr. Cole agreed and said more than they intended. Their defiance was not just about humanity anymore. It became a symbol. Carter asked if that was a good thing. Dr. Cole said that depended on what came next. Change brought both opportunity and danger. But stagnation brought only decay. The coalition had been stagnant for a very long time. Aboard the Defiant, now docked at Earth's orbital station, Captain Daniel Harper dealt with his own complications. He became the most famous human in the galaxy, and possibly the most infamous. Lieutenant Jake announced another interview request. This one from Academic Networks. They wanted to understand human tactical thinking. Commander Lisa laughed. She said they wanted to understand how humans made them look like fools. Daniel rubbed his temples. He told Jake to decline politely. They were not giving away tactical secrets, no matter how the request was phrased. Jake continued, saying Daniel also had 17 marriage proposals, 3 death threats from coalition loyalists, and 1 very odd message. A species called the Rixari were asking if humans needed mercenaries. Lisa muttered that the galaxy was losing its mind. Daniel stood and walked to the observation window, looking down at Earth. He said, "No, Commander." The galaxy was waking up. Humans just happened to be the alarm clock. His communicator chimed. Admiral Peterson's voice said to report to his office immediately. They had a situation. 20 minutes later, Daniel stood in Peterson's office as the Admiral played a recording. It showed a small freighter, with obvious coalition design broadcasting on human frequencies. A woman's voice spoke in slightly accented English. She said this was Captain Nina Ross, of the independent trader, Voyager's Dream. She was human. Born on a coalition world called Nova Terra. There were millions of humans out there scattered across coalition space over the past decade. They saw Harper's broadcast. They saw him stand up to the aliens. The recording continued with Nina's weathered face filling the screen. She looked tired but determined. She said they wanted to come home. Not all of them, but those who could. The coalition was restricting travel now. They were afraid humans would consolidate. They were right to be afraid. She asked if Harper could help them. The recording ended. Peterson leaned back in his chair. He said they received 47 similar messages. Thousands of humans stuck in coalition space, wanting to return to Earth or join human settlements. The coalition was starting to blockade them. Daniel said angrily that was effectively taking hostages. Peterson agreed exactly. Which was why Daniel was going back out there. Daniel raised an eyebrow and asked what Peterson meant. The Admiral said the Defiant and 2 escort destroyers would go. Daniel would bring their people home. If the coalition wanted to stop him, well, Daniel already proved he could handle them. Daniel said that was one lucky engagement. They could not count on that working twice, Peterson said, which was why Daniel would have backup. They equipped his ships with some of Dr. Cole's new technology, and Daniel would not go in blind. They made some friends. Peterson pulled up another hologram. It showed a slim reptilian being with shimmering scales. This was Ambassador Shira of the Rixari clans. Turns out they had been unhappy under coalition rule for about 3 centuries. They were offering to help. Daniel studied the image. He asked why. What did they get out of it? Peterson said proof that the coalition could be defied. A chance to stand with someone who might actually change things. The Rixari were warriors. They respected strength, and Daniel just showed them something they thought impossible. Daniel nodded slowly. He asked when they leave. Peterson said, 72 hours. He would say good luck. But he did not think Daniel needed it. Daniel needed to be smart, careful, and ready to fight if necessary. Daniel said understood. As Daniel left Peterson's office, he found Lisa waiting in the corridor. She said she heard. The crew was already preparing. They volunteered. Daniel said he did not even issue the order yet. Lisa smiled. She said after what they did, this crew would not let anyone else take the Defiant back out there. They were with him all the way. Back on Apex Prime, Zelnathar received troubling reports. The Rixari clans withdrew their representative from the council. 3 minor species requested re-evaluation of their coalition membership terms. Most disturbing, a group of Luminar philosophers published something titled The Value of Chaos and Lessons from Humanity. His military advisor warned this was spreading. The humans became a symbol of resistance. Every day they delayed, crushing them. More species began questioning coalition authority. Zelnathar asked what would happen if they crushed humans with overwhelming force. The advisor said then, they proved the humans right, that the coalition maintained order through fear and violence, not wisdom and cooperation. Zelnathar asked what if they did nothing. The advisor said the coalition would fragment, possibly within a generation. Zelnathar considered his options. All of them were unpleasant. The humans placed him in an impossible position. Show weakness by negotiating, or show tyranny by destroying them. He finally ordered to prepare the fleet. But not for Earth. Not yet. They should find where Captain Harper was going and intercept him there. They would make an example that showed both their power and their mercy. The advisor asked, what if Harper refused to surrender? Zelnathar's features hardened into sharp angles. Then they would show the galaxy what happened to those who defied the natural order, even if they were human. Across the stars, 2 forces were preparing for confrontation. One represented 1,000,000 years of order and control. The other represented chaos, freedom, and the stubborn human refusal to be told what they could not do. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see which would prevail. In the vast dark between stars, Captain Nina Ross guided her small freighter toward a meeting point. She hoped the famous Captain Harper was everything the broadcasts made him seem. The real test was about to begin. The Defiant emerged from its jump at the edge of the Nova Terminus system. This was home to the largest human colony outside Earth. Flanking the Defiant were the destroyers, relentless and intrepid. Both were newly built and eager to prove themselves. Captain Daniel Harper commanded a status report from his chair. Commander Lisa Grant reported all systems were normal. Jump drives were cooling as expected. Weapons were powered but not charged. They were being scanned by at least 40 different sources. Lieutenant Jake looked up from his console with concern on his face. He said they had coalition ships, lots of them. 23 vessels in orbit around Nova Terminus. They were blocking the approach routes. Daniel studied the tactical display and asked about composition. Jake said it was a mixed fleet, mostly patrol cruisers and light frigates. Nothing like the armada from before, but still significant. Lisa observed they were not here to fight. They were here to make a point, to show humans in the colony that Earth could not protect them. Jake continued, saying he was receiving a transmission from the surface. It was Nina Ross. Daniel told him to put her through. The view screen showed the interior of what looked like a warehouse. Behind Nina, Daniel could see hundreds of people, maybe thousands. All watching, hopefully. Nina said Captain Harper and expressed relief. She said thank God. They were not sure he would actually come. Daniel said humans did not leave their people behind. He asked what her status was. Nina said they had 3,000 humans ready to evacuate, mostly colonists who had enough of coalition restrictions. Some families and some individuals. All legal Earth citizens under the colonial charters. She paused and added that the coalition blockade was not letting any ships through. They claimed it was for security purposes. Daniel muttered, of course they did. He told Nina to sit tight. They were going to get her out of there. A new voice interrupted. The screen split to show a rocky alien officer. His silicon-based body gleamed under artificial lights. He said he was Sector Commander Brath. Daniel was entering restricted coalition space. He should turn back immediately. Access. Daniel replied evenly that he was here to evacuate Earth citizens from Nova Terminus. They were not looking for a fight. Broth said the humans on Nova Terminus were coalition residents. They required authorization to leave, which had not been granted. Daniel said they were Earth citizens, operating under colonial agreements, the coalition itself signed. Brath said those agreements were under review pending new integration protocols. No departures were authorized at this time. Daniel leaned forward slightly. He said, "Let me make this simple, Commander. Those people down there had the right to go home. Humans were taking them. Brath could either let them do this peacefully or try to stop them." Daniel really hoped he chose the first option. Brath's crystal features remained emotionless. He said Daniel had 3 ships. He had 23. The mathematics were not in Daniel's favor. Daniel said funny thing about mathematics. They did not account for human ingenuity. Before Brath could respond, new contacts appeared on the tactical display. Jake called out that multiple ships were dropping out of jump. Transponders identified them as Rixari clan's vessels. 8 heavy cruisers were forming up on their position. The view screen showed the newcomers, sleek, predatory ships with shimmering hulls that seemed to glow with barely contained energy. On the command frequency, a new voice joined the conversation. A female voice said this was war leader Shira of the Rixari clans. She apologized to Captain Harper for the delay. They had to shake some coalition scouts. Daniel could not help but smile. He said her timing was perfect. Lisa reported she was receiving tactical data from the Rixari ships. They were sharing targeting solutions and coordinated maneuver plans. Very professional. Broth's image flickered with what might have been concern. He said the Rixari had no jurisdiction here. This was coalition space. Shira countered with her reptilian features, arranging into something like a smile. She said coalition space that they were members of. They were simply escorting allies on a humanitarian mission. Unless Brath wanted to order them to leave. That would require a council vote, would it not? The silence that followed was telling. Everyone knew calling for a council vote would take days. It would expose the coalition's internal divisions to public scrutiny. Brath finally said this was irregular. Daniel agreed that this whole situation was irregular. He suggested making it simple. Humans would send shuttles down to evacuate their people. Coalition ships stayed where they were. Human ships stayed where they were. In a few hours, everyone went their separate ways. No one got hurt. No one lost face, and everyone went home. Brath said the council would not approve. Shira interjected that the council did not have to approve. Coalition Charter Section 12, Subsection 4, stated member species had the right to render aid to allied populations in neutral territory. Nova Terminus was listed as neutral colonial space. Broth said with something like admiration that they had been reading coalition laws to find loopholes. Shira admitted, actually, Captain Harper's people found that one. Humans were very good at reading fine print. Daniel watched the tactical display as Brath's ships shifted uncertainly. They had numbers, but Rixari vessels were known to be formidable. And humans already proved they did not fight conventionally. Daniel spoke quietly to Commander Brath. He said he knew Brath was following orders, and he respected that. But Brath should ask himself if this was really the fight he wanted. 3,000 civilians just trying to go home. Was that the hill the coalition wanted to die on? Brath said Daniel was forcing the council's hand. Daniel replied, no. The council forced theirs when they decided humans did not have the right to self-determination. Humans were just pushing back. The long silence that followed felt like forever. The crews of all 3 human ships waited tensely at their stations. In the warehouse, on Nova Terminus, 3,000 people held their breath collectively. Finally, Broth spoke. He said he was transmitting flight clearances for human shuttles. Daniel had 6 hours to complete evacuation. After that, this sector would be declared a coalition security zone. Daniel said, understood, and thank you. As Broth's image disappeared from the screen, Lisa let out a breath. She said she could not believe that worked. Daniel said it worked, because Broth was a professional. He knew this was not worth dying over. Daniel told Jake to coordinate with Captain Ross. Time to get their people home. Over the next 5 hours, a carefully organized operation unfolded. Human shuttles descended to Nova Terminus, under the watchful eyes of both Coalition and Rixari sensors. Families boarded with whatever possessions they could carry. Children looked up at the stars with wonder and fear. Nina supervised the loading with military efficiency. When the last shuttle lifted off, she took one final look at the colony she called home for 8 years. Her co-pilot asked if she had regrets. Nina replied only that they could not take everyone. There were still millions of humans scattered across Coalition space. Not all of them wanted to leave, but those who did deserved the choice. As the shuttles docked with waiting ships, Daniel received a private communication from war leader Shira. She said it was an interesting day. Daniel said that was one word for it. He thanked her for the assist. Shira said the Rixari did not forget debts, nor did they ignore opportunities. Daniel showed the galaxy something important: that the Coalition could be challenged, that their laws had loopholes, that their authority was not absolute. Daniel said he just wanted to bring some people home, Shira said perhaps. But he started something larger than that, whether he intended to or not. The Coalition was fragmenting. Species that had been silent for thousands of years were finding their voices. All because Daniel said one simple word, which was no. Daniel asked if that was a good thing. Shira said that depended on what came next. Change brought both opportunity and danger. But stagnation brought only decay. The Coalition had been stagnant for a very long time. Daniel said the Council would not let this continue. They would come for humans eventually. Shira said then make sure you are ready, and know that when they do, humans would not stand alone. The transmission ended, leaving Daniel to think about the weight of what they began. Back on Apex Prime, High Arbiter Zel Nathar watched recordings of the Nova Terminus evacuation with growing unease. His advisor noted they coordinated with the Rixari. That was a formal alliance in all but name. Zelnathar replied, the Rixari were always problematic, but manageable. Now they had something they never had before, which was hope that the Coalition could be changed. The advisor asked how Zelnathar wished to proceed. Zelnathar was silent for a long moment. His crystal form refracted the chamber's light into thoughtful patterns. He said, to convene the full council. Not here, but on neutral ground, and extend an invitation to Earth. The advisor asked if he wished to negotiate. Zelnathar said quietly he wished to survive. The humans forced his hand. If they crushed humans now, they proved them right about the Coalition. If they negotiated, they showed the Coalition could evolve. Either way, the galaxy was changing. He preferred to guide that change rather than be swept away by it. The advisor said hardliners on the council would object. Zelnathar said let them. But make sure they understood something. The humans had allies now. They had momentum. They became a symbol. The Coalition could destroy the symbol but could not destroy the idea. And ideas were far more dangerous than warships. As the Defiant and escorts jumped back toward Earth with holds filled with grateful refugees, Daniel stood on the bridge looking at the stars. Lisa asked what he was thinking about. Daniel said he was thinking they just crossed a line. They were not just defending Earth anymore. They were leading a movement. People were looking to them to show it was possible to stand up to authority. That was a lot of responsibility. Lisa asked if they could handle it. Daniel was quiet for a moment. He said he did not know. Really did not know. But he knew one thing. They could not stop now. Too many people were counting on them. Too many people were counting on them. Too many people were counting on them. Lisa said then they better not let them down. As Earth drew closer, Daniel thought about the inevitable response from the High Arbiter. This was not over. It might be just beginning. But for now, 3,000 humans were going home. Across the galaxy, millions more were starting to believe that home was something worth fighting for. The revolution, small and fragile, had taken root. 6 weeks after the Nova Terminus evacuation, an event occurred that had never happened before in galactic history. For the first time, in 10,000 years, the Coalition Grand Council convened on neutral ground. Specifically on the human orbital station, Unity 1, hanging in space, between Earth and Mars. High Arbiter Zelnothar appeared via hologram in the central chamber. His crystal form shimmered as he materialized. Around him appeared representatives from all major coalition species. Across from them sat the human delegation, which included President Helen Carter, Admiral Stephen Peterson, Dr. Raymond Cole, and Captain Daniel Harper, who had been promoted to Commodore, but insisted everyone still call him Daniel. The chamber was a work of human engineering. A spherical room with transparent walls offered views of both Earth and Mars. It was a deliberate choice, showing the coalition representatives what humanity was protecting. Ambassador Krell began by saying this was highly irregular. His Vrexian mandibles clicked nervously. President Carter replied calmly that everything about the past 2 months had been irregular. That was why they were here. To find a new way forward. Zelnothar raised an arm for silence. He addressed President Carter, saying her species disrupted galactic order, violated coalition protocols, and inspired unrest across 17 member worlds. Before proceeding, they required acknowledgement of these facts. Carter said absolutely not with a flat tone. Humans defended themselves against unreasonable demands. They evacuated their own citizens. They inspired unrest only because coalition demands were unreasonable to begin with. Commander Brath, the rocky alien, spoke up. He asked how the demands were unreasonable. The coalition maintained galactic peace for 1,000,000 years through their protocols. Daniel leaned forward. He said, with respect, Commander, that they maintained compliance, not peace. That was not the same thing. A prisoner who was afraid to fight back was not at peace. They were just defeated. Krell hissed that this was philosophical semantics. War leader Shira's hologram appeared as the Rixari had been granted observer status. She asked if it was semantics. The humans raised an interesting point. How many species joined the coalition willingly versus how many joined because they saw what happened to those who refused? Uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. The Luminar representative, an ethereal being named Aristos, spoke in their musical voice. They said they spent weeks reviewing their own people's history. The Luminar joined the coalition 800,000 years ago. In their records, Aristos found references to a time before when they were different. More diverse and more chaotic, as aliens would say. They paused and added also more creative and more vibrant. They standardized themselves to join the coalition. And they lost something in the process. Zelnothar countered that they gained stability. Aristos replied, they gained stagnation. The humans forced them to confront an uncomfortable truth. The Luminar had not produced truly original art in 300,000 years. All their music, philosophy, and culture became derivative, variations on approved themes. When did they stop creating and start merely maintaining? Dr. Cole pulled up a holographic display. He asked if he could make a presentation. Zelnothar's form flickered with what might have been curiosity. He said to proceed. The display showed a graph representing innovation rates across coalition space over the past 1,000,000 years. Medical breakthroughs, technological advances, artistic movements, and cultural developments. Dr. Cole asked if anyone noticed anything. The graph showed a sharp decline starting roughly 900,000 years ago. Eventually it flattened to near zero. Dr. Cole explained they became so focused on stability that they accidentally eliminated conditions necessary for innovation. Diversity, conflict, failure, and competition. All the messy, chaotic things that drove evolution, both biological and cultural. Brath argued they had stability. Dr. Cole corrected gently that they had stasis. There was a difference. Stability allowed for controlled growth. Stasis was just a slow death. Admiral Peterson stood. He said, "Let me put this in military terms. Coalition fleet formations were perfect, mathematically optimized and used the same way for thousands of years, which was exactly why 3 human ships could outmaneuver them. Humans were not smarter than aliens. They were just used to adapting." Zelnathar said they advocated for chaos. President Carter replied, "They advocated for balance. Some structure, yes, and some cooperation, absolutely, but also room for diversity, for disagreement, and for species to maintain their unique identities while still working together." She activated another display showing a document. They called it the Principles of Sovereign Cooperation, a framework for galactic civilization that did not require species to give up what made them unique. The Luminar Aristos leaned forward studying the document. They said this was interesting. Humans proposed a federation, rather than a collective. Shared defense and trade but local autonomy on cultural and social matters. Carter confirmed exactly. Species maintained their own militaries, cultures, and social structures. But they agreed to mutual defense, free trade, and peaceful conflict resolution. Krell protested this would fragment the galaxy. Shira countered or diversify it. The Rixari studied this proposal, and it had merit. Zelnathar asked if the war leader would support this. Shira said they would. In fact, they already were. The Rixari clans were prepared to sign a mutual defense pact with Earth under these principles. Daniel watched the coalition representatives process this information. He could see calculations happening behind their various eyes and sensors. Zelnathar said quietly this would end the coalition as they knew it. Carter agreed, yes. But it did not have to end cooperation. Just control. She asked the High Arbiter to answer honestly. Was he happy with the galaxy as it was? 1,000,000 years of the same protocols, the same formations, and the same everything. Or had he ever wondered what could be possible if they tried something new? For a long moment, Zelnathar was silent. When he spoke, his voice carried weariness that transcended translation. He said he served the coalition for 6,000 standard years. In that time, he made countless decisions, enforced countless protocols, and maintained the order that was passed down to him. And in all that time, he never once questioned whether the order itself was worth maintaining. He looked at the humans then, at the other representatives. He said, "Until now." The humans forced him to confront uncomfortable questions. And he found he did not like the answers he was discovering. The water creature representative asked what they should do. President Carter stood. She said they start small. Earth and the Rixari form the first partnership under new principles. Other species were invited to join but not required. The coalition could continue for those who preferred it. But slowly and carefully, they would show the galaxy there was another way. Krell asked, surprised if they would allow the coalition to continue. Daniel said they were not trying to destroy alien civilization. They were just refusing to be absorbed by it. If the coalition worked for other people, keep it. But do not force it on those who wanted something different. Zelnathar's form seemed to brighten slightly. He said a compromise. The coalition maintained its core systems while allowing autonomous zones for species that preferred this new model. Aristos mused it could work. A gradual transition rather than revolutionary upheaval. Broth warned the hardliners would object. Zelnathar said let them, surprising everyone. For 1,000,000 years, they claimed their way brought peace. Now they had a chance to prove it. If their model was truly superior, species would choose it freely. If not, then perhaps it was time for something new. Over the next 6 hours, details were hammered out. Earth and the Rixari would form the first sovereign alliance open to other species. The coalition would continue for current members, but could not force new species to join. Mixed zones would be established where both systems could interact and trade. A galactic court would mediate disputes. As the agreement was finalized, Ambassador Krell approached Daniel privately. He asked if Daniel realized what he had done. Daniel replied, started a revolution. Krell said ended 1,000,000 years of stability. The galaxy would never be the same. Daniel said simply, that was good. Stability was overrated. Growth was messy and chaotic, but it was how civilizations stayed alive. Krell's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. He said humans were impossible. Daniel said they had been told that before. As various delegations prepared to depart, Zelnathar approached President Carter. He said he never thanked her. Carter asked for what? Zelnathar said for forcing them to evolve. They became so focused on preventing change that they forgot how to embrace it. Humans reminded them that static systems eventually decay. Carter smiled. She said, High Arbiter, this might be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Zelnathar said, that was a human cultural reference. He would have to study those now. They had much to learn from each other. 3 months later, the first Sovereign Alliance Summit was held on Earth. 23 species attended, including several that had been coalition members for thousands of years. The Luminar brought their artists. The Rixari brought their warriors. Small aquatic species from the Outer Rim brought their philosophers. And humans brought their chaos. Music from a dozen worlds filled the summit hall. Debates ranged from respectful to heated to hilarious. Cultural exchanges led to unexpected friendships. A rocky scientist bonded with Dr. Cole over quantum mechanics. A bug-like poet collaborated with a human novelist on a cross-species epic. Watching from the observation deck, Daniel stood with Lisa and Jake. Lisa said quietly they did it. They actually changed the galaxy. Daniel corrected her, saying they started to. This was just the beginning. The hard part came next, which was making it work. Jake asked if Daniel thought they could. Daniel looked down at the assembly below. This impossible mixture of beings from across the stars arguing and laughing and learning together. He said, you know what? I think we can. It would not be perfect. It would be messy and complicated, and sometimes frustrating. But that was life. Real life. Not the sterile, controlled existence the Coalition was offering. A young human woman approached, followed by a camera drone. She introduced herself as Sarah Blake from Galactic News Network. She asked what Daniel's response was to critics who said the Alliance would fragment the galaxy into chaos. Daniel smiled. He said they were half right. The galaxy was fragmenting, but it was not into chaos. Our way. The first one, it was into diversity. And diversity was not weakness but strength. Because when you had 1,000 different perspectives and 1,000 different approaches, someone would find solutions that no single perspective could have imagined. She asked about the Coalition. Daniel said the Coalition was welcome to continue for those who wanted it. But they were also welcome to join humans in trying something new. Something that celebrated what made each species unique, instead of trying to file down all their rough edges. As the interview ended, an alert chimed on Daniel's communicator. Admiral Peterson's face appeared. He said, Commodore, we have a situation. An uncontacted species in the Perseus arm just went through their first successful, faster-than-light jump. They were sending out greeting messages. Daniel grinned. He asked, let me guess. The Coalition wanted to bring them into the fold using old protocols. Peterson said, exactly. The Alliance Council was asking if Daniel wanted to lead their diplomatic mission to offer an alternative. Daniel said, tell them he was on his way. He looked at Lisa and Jake. He asked if they wanted to help recruit some new members to their chaotic little alliance. Lisa replied she would not miss it. As the 3 humans headed for the docking bay, Earth hung in the window behind them. Beautiful and diverse and gloriously imperfect. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in 1,000,000 years, that was exactly how it should be. Because humanity learned long ago that the universe did not need more order. It needed more life, in all its messy, chaotic, impossible glory. And they were going to make sure it got exactly that.